When you open a dusty copy of a mid-century kitchen staple and find a recipe titled Classic Christmas Sugar Cookie Cutouts, you are not just finding a cookie, you are uncovering a story. This is the kind of recipe that once defined the holidays, when families gathered around the kitchen table, rolling dough into stars, trees, and bells, frosting them by hand, and remembering simpler times. The brand name Betty Crocker represented the heart of home baking, but somewhere along the way, recipes like this one slipped out of memory. Tonight, we dive into one of those lost gems. I will guide you through the rich lineage of this sugar cookie tradition, the cutouts shaped by childhood imagination and frosting mixed with laughter. Why did this version fade away? What made it special to holiday tables in the 1950s and 60s? And perhaps, how can we bring it back? By exploring this one recipe, we begin a journey through American dessert history, until you realize the entire list of 10 has a hidden cultural meaning. Stick around, because what you will taste is more than sugar and vanilla, it is nostalgia, legacy, and the bite of a forgotten era. There is something quietly magical about opening an old Betty Crocker cookbook from the 1950s and seeing the page for classic Christmas sugar cookie cutouts. The paper is yellowed, the corners smudged with flour, and the typewritten title still glows with that signature red logo, a symbol of every mother, grandmother, and baker who made Christmas feel like home. These cookies were not just desserts, they were family rituals. The dough, soft with butter, kissed with vanilla, was rolled thin on Formica countertops. Children cut them into bells, stars, and snowmen, while the air filled with the scent of sugar and anticipation. Once baked, they became blank canvases, waiting for colorful icing and tiny sprinkles that glittered under warm kitchen lights. Born from post-war optimism, these cookies became the centerpiece of mid-century holiday gatherings. They symbolized joy in small things, the art of baking together when gifts were few but love was plenty. Yet, as convenience mixes and store-bought sweets took over, these hand-rolled cutouts faded quietly into nostalgia. But here is the twist: the original recipe still survives, almost word for word, in Betty Crocker's mid-century cookbooks. Hidden in plain sight, it invites us to relive an era when Christmas was handmade, heartfelt, and fragrant with sugar and butter. So before we turn the page to the next forgotten treasure, let us remember this one, the cookie that defined America's sweetest Christmas tradition. There is a hush of surprise when you slide open the aging cover of the 1963 edition of the Betty Crocker Cookie Book and discover a recipe named Delta Bars. This is not the brown sugar pecan bar you'd expect, it is the shadow of a mid-century fantasy, buried beneath toast and jam breakfasts and store-bought cookies. With a buttery cookie base, a crackling brown sugar meringue topping, and toasted pecans folded in, Delta bars were once the kind of dessert that sparked conversation at holiday potlucks. In the 1960s, Americans were caught between convenience and tradition. Betty Crocker handed home a recipe that looked like a dessert from the future, yet felt like yesterday's warm kitchen. Home cooks creamed butter and sugar, pressed the dough into a pan, then whipped egg whites into stiff peaks before adding brown sugar, folding in pecans, and spreading that glossy mix over the base. The oven did the rest, a crackled top, nutty flecks, all resting on a soft, silky cookie bottom. Why did this recipe vanish from holiday tables? Perhaps because the topping demanded more effort than modern mixes promised, or because its understated elegance was overshadowed by louder desserts. Yet the memory persists, a golden square, part cookie, part meringue, rich with pecans and nostalgia. Today, reclaiming it is more than baking, it is resurrecting a lost chapter of American kitchens. So when you serve a Delta bar, You do more than offer a treat, you revive an era where dessert was celebration, craftsmanship, and community all in one square. Close your eyes and picture a snow-covered 1950s neighborhood on Christmas Eve. The house windows glow with golden light. Bing Crosby plays softly on the radio, and inside, a mother in pearls carefully whips egg whites into glossy peaks. This was the making of cranberry snow pudding, a dessert that looked as magical as the season itself. Born from the pages of Betty Crocker's picture cookbook, 1950, this airy pink pudding captured the essence of mid-century Christmas elegance. It combined tart cranberry juice, sugar, lemon, and gelatin, whipped into a frothy cloud of sweetness. Once chilled, it was served with a rich vanilla custard sauce that poured like golden silk over its soft pink surface. For many post-war families, it symbolized more than dessert, it was hope served in a glass dish. Ingredients were simple, yet presentation was everything. Housewives of the era prided themselves on this jewel-tone pudding that shimmered like frosted snow. As refrigeration and convenience foods took over in the 1960s, delicate gelatin-based puddings faded away. The artistry of the hand-whipped dessert was replaced by instant mixes, and the cranberry snow pudding quietly disappeared from American tables. But one spoonful today could take you back to the laughter, the carols, and that one glowing Christmas when love tasted like cranberry and cream. If you love reviving lost American flavors, subscribe to America's Lost Recipes, where every forgotten dish finds its voice again. Few recipes capture the essence of mid-century America quite like Betty Crocker's rolled cut-out sugar cookies. Introduced in the early 1950s, these cookies were more than a holiday treat, they were a canvas of childhood, a ritual of togetherness that unfolded on countless kitchen tables across the nation. The recipe appeared in the Betty Crocker picture cookbook, printed in the unmistakable red and white, its pages promising cookies that hold their shape, bake with golden edges, and smile when you do. Housewives swore by it. The dough, a perfect balance of butter, sugar, and vanilla, rolled smooth beneath wooden pins dusted with flour. Cookie cutters, shaped like stars, angels, and trees, pressed deep into the dough. Children watched, eyes wide, as the cookies emerged from the oven, their edges crisp and golden, waiting for frosting and colored sugar. These cookies symbolized post-war optimism. In an era rebuilding from hardship, they offered something pure, sweetness crafted by hand. But as the decades rolled on, refrigerated doughs and pre-made icings took over. Convenience replaced care, and the quiet joy of rolling and cutting cookies slowly faded from family traditions. Yet, hidden in vintage cookbooks and handwritten cards, the original recipe still whispers a secret, that true celebration begins not with perfection, but with participation. When families gather to roll, cut, and decorate, they revive more than cookies, they revive connection, memory, and love. So, dust off that old Betty Crocker cookbook, pull out the cookie cutters, and let the scent of vanilla and butter carry you back to a time when Christmas magic began in the kitchen, one rolled cutout at a time. It was salty, creamy, and unforgettable, but not always for the right reasons. During the Great Depression and World War II, this humble dish became both a comfort and a complaint, cream-chipped beef on toast, better known by soldiers as SOS, short for stuff on a shingle. Born out of military necessity, this dish was pure practicality. Thin slices of dried beef were chopped and simmered in a thick, white bechamel sauce made from butter, flour, and milk. The mixture was then poured over toasted bread, creating a filling meal that could stretch scarce ingredients into something hearty enough to keep a soldier, or a struggling family, fed through the day. It was cheap, shelf-stable, and quick to make, a true Depression-era survival food. While troops often joked about its appearance, many grew to love it once they returned home. It reminded them of camaraderie, discipline, and the simple meals that carried them through uncertain times. By the 1940s and 50s, cream-chipped beef even appeared in home kitchens and diners, often served with peas or hard-boiled eggs for extra substance. Today, it's mostly vanished from American tables, replaced by fancier breakfasts and fast food. But for those who lived through hard times, SOS wasn't just a meal, it was a memory of resilience, humor, and the ability to turn rations into comfort. Because in America's toughest decades, even something as simple as chipped beef on toast told a story, one of endurance, invention, and the taste of survival. Depression-era peanut butter bread. In the 1930s, when sugar was scarce and eggs were a luxury, Americans found comfort in something simple, sweet, and shelf-stable: peanut butter bread. A quiet hero of the Great Depression, it filled hungry stomachs and stretched the last jar of peanut butter into something that felt almost like dessert. This wasn't your modern fluffy loaf. Peanut butter bread was dense, moist, and deeply nutty, made from pantry staples: flour, baking powder, milk, and a generous scoop of peanut butter. No butter, no eggs, no yeast. Just the ingenuity of home cooks determined to make something special out of almost nothing. The recipe first gained fame through community cookbooks and radio programs like the Betty Crocker Cooking School of the Air. Housewives shared it as an affordable energy bread for families and children. It became a symbol of resourcefulness, proving that flavor could survive even in hard times. When baked, the aroma of roasted peanuts filled modest kitchens, offering warmth that money couldn't buy. Slices were eaten plain, with a drizzle of honey, or topped with thin apple slices, each bite a small reminder that America's heart could endure anything with a little creativity and a lot of courage. Though forgotten by most modern bakers, peanut butter bread still carries the spirit of Depression-era resilience, a reminder that true comfort doesn't come from abundance, but from the hands that keep baking when times get tough. Because in those days, a loaf of peanut butter bread wasn't just food, it was hope, baked golden brown. The 1940s tomato soup cake. Picture this: the year is 1943. Ration books line kitchen drawers, butter is nearly impossible to find, and yet, on countless American tables, a soft, spiced cake appears. Its secret ingredient? A can of Campbell's tomato soup. Yes, you heard that right. Tomato soup cake was one of the strangest yet most beloved desserts of the World War II era. Housewives discovered that the tangy canned soup could stand in for milk, eggs, or even fruit puree, adding moisture and color when ingredients were scarce. What emerged from those humble ovens was a surprisingly rich spice cake, tinted faintly orange, with warm notes of cinnamon, nutmeg, and clove. This recipe was not a gimmick, it was survival with flair. It first appeared in community cookbooks during the late 1930s and later in Campbell's promotional ads, encouraging thrifty families to bake something different. The soup's acidity acted like buttermilk, enhancing the cake's texture while keeping it tender for days. Mothers frosted it with whatever they had, sometimes just a dusting of powdered sugar, other times a dreamy cream cheese topping. For children who grew up during wartime, this cake tasted like celebration, proof that love could still rise from the barest shelves. Over time, tomato soup cake faded into culinary folklore, dismissed as a quirky relic. Yet those who remember it speak fondly of its comforting spice and the ingenuity that made it possible. Because in the heart of America's hardest decade, this cake was more than dessert, it was defiance. A sweet, spiced reminder that creativity thrives even when the cupboard runs dry. The 1950s ribbon gelatin dessert. Step back to the pastel kitchens of 1956, where every party shimmered, quite literally. Picture a tall glass dish glistening under the light, vivid layers of red, green, yellow, and cream, stacked with perfect precision. This was the ribbon gelatin dessert, a dazzling holiday masterpiece that turned Jell-O into edible art. In mid-century America, gelatin was not just food, it was fashion. Betty Crocker and General Foods pushed it as a symbol of modern homemaking. Housewives were encouraged to build beauty into every meal, and gelatin molds became the height of sophistication. The ribbon gelatin, with its mesmerizing layers, was the crown jewel of that trend. Each stripe was made by carefully chilling one flavored layer, lime, cherry, lemon, before adding the next. A creamy white layer, often made with condensed milk or whipped topping, separated the colors like satin ribbons. It took patience, precision, and a steady refrigerator. But the result? A dessert that looked like stained glass, tasted like childhood, and impressed every holiday guest. Children waited for the moment the mold would release its kaleidoscopic glow onto the platter. It jiggled, it sparkled, and it felt like Christmas magic captured in gelatin form. Behind its cheerful colors, however, lay a story of post-war optimism. America was healing, inventing, and celebrating abundance after years of rationing. But as tastes changed, gelatin desserts fell out of fashion, dismissed as kitschy or overly sweet. The ribbon gelatin quietly vanished from Christmas tables, replaced by simpler sweets. Yet for those who lived through the 1950s, it remains a symbol of hope, homemaking pride, and the radiant joy of a nation finding color again.